Thrive. I am on the front porch of the house where I've been staying, and I'm going to finish Wayside School is Falling Down. We have 3 chapters today instead of just 2, so we'll be reading chapters 28, 29, and 30. Oh, and I'm Molly, by the way. Miss Molly. I work at main campus, and I really miss seeing all of you guys, and I hope that we're back soon. So, the chapter 28 is titled Barouche. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "I have some wonderful news," she said. The children stopped what they were doing and looked up. They waited for Mrs. Jules to tell them the wonderful news. "You are a very lucky class indeed," said Mrs. Jules. "Mrs. Walouche, the world-famous dancer, will be coming here to Wayside School. She will teach you all how to dance." Everyone was still waiting for the wonderful news. "Isn't that exciting?" asked Mrs. Jules. "You will see her every Wednesday instead of going to PE." That doesn't sound as fun as PE to me. "Will girls have to dance with boys?" asked Jenny. "I suppose," said Mrs. Jules. "Gross!" exclaimed Leslie. "Yuck!" said Dana. "Will boys have to dance with girls?" asked Ron. "Obviously," said Mrs. Jules. "No way," said Eric Fry. "I'd rather dance with a dead rat," said Terrence. Everyone started talking at once about cooties and warts and other horrible diseases you get from touching girls or boys. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell again and told them to settle down. "Mrs. Jules, I don't need to take dancing lessons," said Eric Bacon. "I already know how to dance." "Yes, Eric, I've seen you dance," Mrs. Jules said sarcastically. Eric Bacon was a great break dancer, but break dancing was no longer allowed at Wayside School. That was because every time Eric danced, he broke something. "Mrs. Walouche will teach you the grace and beauty of classical ballroom dancing," said Mrs. Jules. Everyone groaned. On Wednesday, they will all head out to their first dancing lesson, except Myron. Myron went to PE. "How come Myron never has to do anything?" asked Jason. "I don't know," said Calvin. "I've been wondering about that too. Myron's father must be friends with the president," said Dee. "I thought Myron gave Mr. Kidswater $1,000, said Todd. "No, I bet he's blackmailing Mrs. Jules," said Jenny. "How could he do that?" asked Benjamin. "Maybe Mrs. Jules got drunk," said Jenny, "and then she danced on her desk with a lampshade on her head, and Myron took her picture, and so now Mrs. Jules has to let Myron do anything he wants, or else he'll show the picture to Mr. Kidswater." "That makes sense," said Matt. "Except if she had a lampshade on her head, how would Mr. Kidswater know it was Mrs. Jules?" asked Todd. No one knew the answer to that. They entered the room on the second floor. "Welcome," said Mrs. Walouche, a strange-looking woman with bright red hair. It looked like her head was on fire. "My name is Miss Walouche. It's so wonderful to be here at Wayside School." And I'm not just talking like that. That's how it's written in the book. She wore pink tights and a sparkling pink top. "I hope we will be friends, yes?" she asked. Nobody said a word. All around were red and green balls. There was also one yellow ball. This was the room where Louis kept the balls for recess and lunch. It was also the room that was used for school dances. It was the ballroom. "So," exclaimed Mrs. Walouche, "who will be first?" Everyone tried to hide behind somebody else. Mrs. Walouche put her hand on Ron's face. "What is your name?" she asked. "Ron." He squeaked. "Ronaldo," bellowed Mrs. Walouche, "King of the Gypsies." "I don't know how to dance," said Ron. "Dance?" asked Mrs. Walouche. She looked very surprised. "We're not going to dance," she said. "We're not?" asked Ron. "No, Ronaldo," whispered Mrs. Walouche. "We are going to tango." She put her left arm around Ron's waist. Then she grabbed his left hand with her right and stuck it out in front of them. Suddenly, the music started. Mrs. Walouche dragged poor Ron across the room as she stomped her feet in time to the music. Dump, 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 da-dump, da-dump, dump. "Hey!" When she yelled "hey," she threw Ron up in the air and clapped her hands. Ron turned a somersault in mid-air. Then Miss Walouche caught him. They tangoed back to where they had started. Ron's eyes were spinning in opposite directions. "Hey, hey, that looks like fun," said Marisa. "Do me, do me." "Very well," said Mrs. Walouche. She grabbed Marisa and tangoed with her across the room. Dump-da-dump, dump, dump, dump. "Hey!" And she threw Marisa up in the air and clapped her hands. Mauricia turned a double somersault before Mrs. Walouche caught her. They tangoed back to the front. My turn, said Terence. As Mrs. Walouche tangoed with Terence, the other kids stamped their feet along with Mrs. Walouche. They all yelled, "Hey!" at the same time and clapped their hands. One by one, Mrs. Walouche tangoed with every kid in the class. The other kids danced with each other. Boys danced with girls, girls danced with boys, and they didn't care. Paul danced with Leslie. Dana danced with... Thank you.
For your mom.
Dana danced with John Terence, and John Terence with Rondi. Allison danced with Jason. DJ danced with Kathy. Todd danced with Joy. Hey! They all shouted together. Of course, they weren't strong enough to throw each other up in the air. Instead, they tried to trip each other and throw each other on the ground. Hey! Even Kathy was having fun. Hey! They shouted as she kicked DJ in the rear end. They also threw balls at each other. Mrs. Walouche began to get tired. Sometimes she didn't catch the children after she tossed them in the air. Dee Dee crashed to the floor. Wow, she said, this is more fun than murder the man with the ball. At last the music stopped. Thump, 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 thump. And everyone shouted, hey, one last time. Mrs. Walouche clapped her hands. Wonderful, she said. Fantastic. They all staggered out of the ballroom, cut up, bruised, and bleeding. Next week, we waltz. Mrs. Walouche called after them. So how did everyone like dancing? Asked Mrs. Jules. When they returned, dance, asked Ronaldo, king of the gypsies. We didn't dance. You didn't? Asked Mrs. Jules. No, said Ronaldo. We tangoed. Everyone cheered. It was wonderful, exclaimed Kathy. Fantastic, said Terence. Myron was so sorry he missed it. I can't wait till next Wednesday, said Todd. So that is hilarious. They ended up loving it. Okay, chapter 29 is The Lost Year. Mrs. Jules was teaching the class about mammals. All mammals have hair, she said. Phoebe raised her hand. Is my father a mammal? She asked. Yes, all people are mammals, said Mrs. Jules. But my father doesn't have any hair, said Phoebe. He's bald. If y'all can hear me, it's really windy. Everyone laughed. Benjamin stared down at the top of his desk. He was very determined. Mrs. Jules would be handing out report cards at the end of the week, and he had to tell her his real name before then. Remember, he's been going by this other name. He raised his hand, but Mac also raised his hand. Yes, Mac, said Mrs. Jules. I heard about a man who was getting his hair cut, said Mac, and the barber cut off one of the man's ears. See, the man had a very long hair, and I think he was a hippie. So the barbers couldn't see his ear until it fell onto the floor. Thank you, Mac, said Miss Jules. That was a really interesting story. I'm not finished, said Mac. When the barber saw the ear on the floor, he said, is that your ear on the floor? And the hippie said, what? I can't hear you. So the barber showed him his ear, then he called an ambulance to take the hippie to the hospital. Were they able to put his ear back on? Asked Todd. We'll see, said Mac. The doctors were all set to sew it back to his head. They were in the operating room and everything, but suddenly they couldn't find the ear. Man, they looked everywhere for it. Did they look under the operating table? Asked Joy. Yep, said Mac. It wasn't there. How about the bathroom? Asked Eric Bacon. Maybe they lost it when they washed their hands. They looked, but it wasn't there, said Mac. Did they leave it at the barber shop? Asked Jenny. Nope. Did they ever find it? Asked Allison. Yes, said Mac, but you'll never guess where. In the refrigerator? Grumbled Mrs. Jules. No. How would it get there? Asked Mac. Well, we really need to get back to mammals, said Mrs. Jules. Yes, Mark. Benjamin lowered his hand. My name's not Mark, he said. My name really is Benjamin. Benjamin Nushmut. And I came from Himpleton, not Magadonia. Fine, said Mrs. Jules, but we were talking about mammals. Now, the whale is the largest mammal, even though it lives in the ocean. It's still a mammal, not a fish. Do whales have hair? Asked John. Yes, said Mrs. Jules. Dana laughed. A whale with pigtails, she exclaimed. Boy, I would love to pull one of those, said Paul. Benjamin couldn't believe it. Did you hear what I just said? He asked. Yes, Benjamin, said Mrs. Jules. Well, don't you think I'm strange? Asked Benjamin. And all this time you've been calling me by the wrong name and I never told you. Don't you think I'm crazy? No, said Mrs. Jules. Benjamin was getting upset. Well, don't you think it's a stupid name, Benjamin Nushmut? He looked around at his classmates. Doesn't anyone think I'm a weirdo? No, you're not weird, said Sherry. I'll tell you what's weird. What's weird is bringing a hobo to school for show and tell. I'm the one who's weird. That's not weird, said Phoebe. What's weird is telling everyone you have a brother when you don't. I'm the weirdo. You call that that weird?" exclaimed Stephen. "I'm weird. Who else would choke himself just to look nice?" Remember he wore that tuxedo where he had to wear the necktie? "That's not weird," said Ginny. "That's normal. Try reading a story backward. That's weird. I'm the weird one in this class." "That's a laugh," said Rondi. "If you're so weird, how come you never asked Louis to kick you in the teeth? I'm the one who's crazy." "No, that's not crazy," said Todd. "I'll tell you what's crazy. What's crazy is that we all go to school on the 30th floor and the bathrooms are all the way down on the first." Everyone agreed with that. Benjamin shook his head. What a bunch of weirdos, he thought. Then he smiled. He felt proud to be in a class where nobody was strange because nobody was normal. "Oh, this must be your lunch," said Mrs. Jules. She gave Benjamin the white paper sack that had been sitting on her desk since Benjamin's first day of school. At lunch, Allison headed down the stairs. "Mark!" she exclaimed. "Hi, Allison," said Mark Miller. "Long time no see." He carried a white paper sack just like Benjamin's. Allison was afraid she was back on the 19th story. "Don't worry," said Mark. "Suddenly, everyone realized my name was Mark Miller and not Benjamin Nushmet. And then Mrs. Zarves gave me this bag and told me to take it to the hospital. Is it your lunch?" "Look inside," said Mark, and he handed her the bag. Allison looked inside. There was an ear. Allison's eyes lit up. "Oh, now I get it," she exclaimed. "I understand everything. There is no Mrs. Zarves. See, Mac was talking about the ear, then Benjamin Nushmet said his name wasn't Mark Miller, so that means you..." "What?" said Mark. Allison suddenly looked very confused. "Never mind," she mumbled. Just for a second, Allison understood everything, but then she lost it. Okay. It's a crazy school. We are on the last chapter. Chapter 30, Wayside School is Falling Down, which is also the title of the book that we're reading. This one's short. Wayside School is falling down. A strong wind whooshed around the playground in early morning before school, blowing dirt and leaves in the faces of the children. When the bell rang, they could hardly make it from the playground to the school. The wind was blowing directly at them, pushing their hair straight back. With every gust of wind, the school building teetered one way and then tottered back the other. As they headed up the stairs, they could feel the building sway back and forth. The higher they got, the more it swayed. "Hooray!" yelled Kathy. "Wayside School is falling down." "What are you so happy about?" asked Joe. "We'll all die." "Yes, but we won't have to do our homework," said Kathy. They entered the room on the 30th story. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "Find your seats," she said. That wasn't easy. All the desks were crammed together on one side of the room. The building swayed and all the desks slid to the other side of the room. Finally, the children all found their seats and planted their feet firmly on the floor. "We are going to have to do a fire drill today," Mrs. Jules told them, "so let's be prepared. Who is our door monitor this week?" "I am," said Mauricia. "Good," said Mrs. Jules. "Who is our help monitor?" "I am," said Jason. "Very good," said Mrs. Jules. "You have a big mouth." Stephen raised his hand. "What if there really is a fire?" he asked. "There's not going to be a real fire," said Mrs. Jules. "It's just a drill." "I know, but what if there really is a real fire?" asked Stephen. "And then the firemen won't come because they think it's a drill. The school will burn down." "Don't worry," said Kathy. "The school is not going to burn down. It's going to fall." Bleep, 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 bleep. It was the fire drill. Mauricia, the door monitor, held open the door. Jason, the help monitor, ran to the window. "Help!" he screamed. "Save us! We're up here! Help, help!" Mrs. Jules led the children out of the room. If there was a real fire, the children might not be able to see her because of the smoke, so she constantly rang her cowbell. There wouldn't be time to go all the way down the stairs either. Mrs. Jules led them up the ladder and through the trapdoor to the roof. If there was a real fire, a helicopter would rescue them. The wind was even worse on the roof than it was on the playground. Mrs. Jules stood in the center and held her cowbell high above her head. She looked like she was the Statue of Liberty. "Everyone stay away from the edge," she warned. Kathy sang, "Wayside School is falling down." "It's not falling down," said Stephen. "It's burning down, and no one will rescue us because they think it's a drill." Ginny noticed a dark, funnel-shaped cloud off in the distance. "Tornado!" she screamed. "We're all going to get sucked off the roof." A flash of lightning lit the sky, followed by a loud crack of thunder. "We're going to be struck by lightning," shouted Todd. "No, we won't," said Stephen. "We'll burn in the fire." "No, we'll be sucked up by the tornado," said Ginny. "No, the school is going to fall down," said Kathy. Mrs. Jules continued to ring her cowbell. Klabonk, klabonk, klabonk. The strong wind carried the sound for miles. Suddenly, screams came down from below. Then the whole building began to shake violently. "Earthquake!" yelled Benjamin. "Fire!" corrected Stephen. "The school must have just been struck by lightning," said Todd. "Tornado!" said Jenny. "All fall down," said Kathy. The building continued to rumble and shake. There were more screams. "Listen," said Myron. "They're trying to warn us about something." Down below, over 500 kids and teachers were shouting together, "Start bringing purple!" "What are they saying?" asked Mrs. Jules. "I don't know," said Myron. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "Star bringing purple!" they shouted again. "It sounded like star bringing purple," said Myron. "What does that mean?" asked Mrs. Jules. Myron shrugged. Mrs. Jules rang her bell even louder. "Star bringing your bell!" "Wait, they're not saying star bringing purple. They're saying star bringing your bell." "What's a your bell?" asked Mrs. Jules. She rang her bell even louder. The school shook and rumbled. "Stop bringing your bell." "Stop something," said Myron. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "Stop ringing your bell. Stop ringing your bell," said Myron. "Oh," said Mrs. Jules. She stopped ringing her bell. Down below, all the students and teachers clapped their hands, but it was too late. Rondi opened the trap door. "Cows!" she exclaimed. The school was filled with cows. From all over the countryside, cows had heard Mrs. Jules' cowbell, heeded the call, and there were thousands of them. They filled the stairs in all the classrooms. There was no way for the children to get down. Helicopters finally came and took them one at a time off the roof. Wayside School didn't blow down. It didn't burn down. It wasn't struck by lightning or sucked up by the tornado or destroyed by an earthquake. It was cowed. No one knew how to get rid of the cows. Cows are strange animals. They don't mind walking upstairs, but nothing can make them walk downstairs. Someone suggested starving the cows, but the farmers wouldn't allow that. Thousands of bales of hay were sent in. Several cows had calves, baby cows. The newspapers thought it was funny and made jokes about cows learning to read and write, and so Wayside School was closed. The kids and teachers were temporarily sent to different schools. Only one person stayed behind. He was there all day and all night trying to get the cows to go home. "Come on," pleaded Louis, the yard teacher, as he pushed and pulled on the cows. "Go home, please, pretty please." And everybody moved. And that is the end of Wayside School. Thanks for reading along with me.